A young girl vanishes from school without a trace. For 2 agonizing years, her mother, Sarah, is left with nothing but grief and unanswered questions. Then, a random, aimless search on Google Maps reveals a haunting image hiding in plain sight, a single clue that the police missed, reigniting a desperate search for the truth about the mysterious man in the suit, seen walking with her daughter. The morning sun streamed through Sarah Mitchell's kitchen window, but its warmth couldn't penetrate the cold emptiness that had settled into her bones 2 years ago. She moved through her daily routine like a ghost, making coffee she barely tasted, arranging papers she wouldn't read, checking her phone for calls that never came. Every surface in the house still held traces of her daughter Lily. The crayon marks on the kitchen table, the height measurements penciled on the doorframe, the unicorn stickers on the refrigerator that Sarah couldn't bring herself to remove. It had been exactly 2 years since that horrific Tuesday afternoon. Sarah remembered every detail with painful clarity. She had dropped 8-year-old Lily off at Lincoln Elementary School that morning, just like she had done hundreds of times before. Lily had been wearing her favorite bright pink coat, the one with the sparkly buttons she'd picked out herself for her birthday. Her unicorn backpack bounced against her shoulders as she ran toward the school entrance, turning back once to wave at Sarah with that brilliant smile that could light up any room. Sarah had waved back, already thinking about the grocery list and the pile of laundry waiting at home. She had no idea it would be the last time she would see her daughter. The call came at 3:15 that afternoon. Sarah was folding towels when her phone rang. The school's number appeared on the screen. At first, she wasn't concerned. Maybe Lily had forgotten her lunch money again, or perhaps there was a permission slip that needed signing. But the voice on the other end wasn't the cheerful secretary she was expecting. It was the principal, and his tone made Sarah's blood run cold. Lily hadn't shown up for her afternoon classes. She'd been marked present in the morning, attended her first 3 periods, but after lunch she simply vanished. No one had seen her leave. The teacher assumed she'd gone to the nurse's office. The nurse thought she was in the library. The librarian believed she'd returned to class. It wasn't until attendance was taken for the last period that anyone realized Lily Mitchell was gone. Sarah's world shattered in that moment. She dropped the phone, grabbed her keys, and drove to the school faster than she'd ever driven anywhere in her life. The building was already swarming with police officers by the time she arrived. Detective James Miller, a tall man with kind eyes and graying temples, took charge of the case immediately. He assured Sarah they would find Lily, that most missing children were found within the first 24 hours, that they had protocols for situations like this. The search began immediately. Police officers canvassed the neighborhood, going door to door, showing Lily's school photo to anyone who would look. Search parties formed, comprised of teachers, parents, and community volunteers who walked through nearby parks and wooded areas calling Lily's name until their voices grew hoarse. The local news picked up the story, broadcasting Lily's picture across the state. Sarah's phone rang constantly with tips and sightings that led nowhere. Detective Miller was thorough and compassionate. He interviewed every teacher, every student in Lily's class, every staff member who'd been at the school that day. He reviewed the cafeteria footage, which showed Lily eating lunch with her friends, laughing at something one of them had said. But the crucial security camera, the one that monitored the side exit near the playground, had mysteriously malfunctioned that day. The footage was corrupted, showing nothing but static during the exact window when Lily disappeared. Days turned into weeks. The searching continued, but the intensity began to wane. The volunteers dwindled. The news coverage moved on to other stories. Detective Miller kept working the case, but even he had to admit they had no solid leads. No witness had seen Lily leave the school. No vehicle had been spotted in the area that didn't belong. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Sarah refused to give up. She quit her job to focus entirely on finding Lily. She created social media pages, printed thousands of flyers, and traveled to neighboring states whenever a tip came in. Her husband, Mark, tried to support her, but the strain eventually broke their marriage. He moved out after 6 months, unable to live in a house that had become a shrine to their missing daughter. Sarah understood. She couldn't blame him for needing to escape the constant reminder of their loss. Now, 2 years later, Sarah lived alone in the same house, surrounded by memories. The police case had officially gone cold, though Detective Miller still called occasionally to check in. Most people had moved on, assuming the worst, but Sarah couldn't move on. A mother doesn't give up on her child. Every morning she woke up believing that today might be the day. Today might bring answers. On this particular afternoon, a rainy Thursday that seemed especially gray and lifeless, Sarah sat at her computer in the living room. She'd been mindlessly scrolling through news articles about missing children, a habit she'd developed that brought both pain and a strange sense of connection to other parents living her nightmare. But the stories were starting to blur together, and her eyes were tired. She needed a break from the endless cycle of hope and despair. Without any particular purpose, Sarah opened Google Maps on her laptop. She wasn't looking for anything specific. Sometimes she used it to virtually visit places she and Lily had been together. The zoo, the beach they'd visited the summer before she disappeared. The ice cream shop where Lily always ordered strawberry with rainbow sprinkles. It was a form of digital pilgrimage, a way to feel close to her daughter when the physical distance seemed unbearable. Today, she found herself typing in the address of Lincoln Elementary School. She knew it was masochistic, but she couldn't help herself. The street view loaded, showing the familiar red brick building with its cheerful welcome sign and colorful playground equipment. Sarah's heart clenched as she virtually stood in the exact spot where she'd last seen Lily. She could almost hear her daughter's voice calling out goodbye, almost see that pink coat disappearing through the entrance. Using her mouse, Sarah began to virtually walk around the school's perimeter. She'd done this before, many times, searching for something, anything that might have been missed. She moved down Maple Street, past the row of houses where some of Lily's classmates lived. She turned onto Oak Avenue, following the path Lily might have taken if she'd decided to walk home alone, though she never would have done that. Lily was a rule follower, a careful child who always did what she was told. Sarah continued her virtual journey, moving through the neighborhood with no real destination in mind. She was about to close the laptop when something made her pause. She'd clicked onto a street view from Birch Road, about 3 blocks from the school. The image was dated just 2 days after Lily's disappearance. Sarah's finger hovered over the mouse as she noticed something in the distance. There was a figure walking along the sidewalk, far enough away that the details were fuzzy. It was a small figure, a child, walking beside a taller adult. Sarah's pulse quickened, though she told herself not to get her hopes up. She'd seen countless children on these virtual walks, and none of them had been Lily. But something about this child's posture, the way she held her shoulders, seemed familiar. Sarah zoomed in as far as the image quality would allow. The picture became pixelated, but she could make out more details. The child was wearing a bright pink coat. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. How many children in this neighborhood had bright pink coats? She zoomed in further, squinting at the screen. There was something on the child's back. A backpack, with what looked like a horn protruding from the top. A unicorn backpack. Sarah's hands began to shake. She zoomed out slightly to get a better view of the adult walking beside the child. It was a man, tall and thin, wearing a dark suit that seemed too large for his frame. His hand was on the child's shoulder, not in a gentle, guiding way, but gripping it, as if preventing her from running away. The man's face was blurred by the Google Maps privacy filter, but his posture was rigid, purposeful. He was walking quickly, and the child seemed to be struggling to keep up. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She grabbed her phone and dialed Detective Miller's number from memory. He answered on the third ring. "Sarah? Is everything all right?" "I found something," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "On Google Maps, I think I found Lily." There was a pause on the other end. Sarah could imagine Detective Miller's expression, the mixture of concern and skepticism he'd worn so many times when she'd called with potential leads that went nowhere. "What do you mean you found her on Google Maps?" he asked carefully. "There's a Street View image from 2 days after she disappeared. It shows a girl in a pink coat with a unicorn backpack walking with a man in a dark suit. Detective Miller, I'm certain it's Lily." "Sarah, I understand you want to find Lily, but a blurry image from 2 years ago—" "Please?" Sarah interrupted. "Just look at it. I'm sending you the screenshot now." She heard Detective Miller sigh, but he agreed to review the image. Sarah emailed him the screenshot, along with the exact coordinates and date stamp from Google Maps. She stayed on the line, listening to the silence as he opened the file. "I see what you're looking at," he said finally. "The quality isn't great, but I admit the clothing matches Lily's description from that day. The timing is certainly suspicious. Can you enhance it? Run it through some kind of software to clear up the image?" "We can try. Sarah, I need you to understand that even if this is Lily, this image is 2 years old, but it's the first new lead we've had. I'm going to reopen the case and have our tech team analyze this image." Sarah felt a surge of hope she hadn't experienced in months. After ending the call with Detective Miller, she returned to the Google Maps image, studying every pixel. The man in the suit, who was he? She tried to remember if she'd seen anyone matching that description around the school. The suit looked ill-fitting, almost like a costume rather than regular clothing. The way he held Lily's shoulder, the stiff way he walked, everything about him seemed wrong. Over the next few days, Sarah couldn't focus on anything else. She spent hours on Google Maps, checking every Street View image from around the time of Lily's disappearance, searching for another glimpse of the man in the suit. She found nothing else, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the answer was right there, just out of reach. Detective Miller called 3 days later with news. The tech team had managed to enhance the image slightly. While the faces remained blurred, they'd been able to confirm that the child's coat had sparkly buttons, just like Lily's. They'd also noticed something else. The man's suit had a distinctive pattern on the lapel, what looked like a small pin or badge. "We're cross-referencing this with employee records from the school and surrounding businesses," Detective Miller explained, "looking for anyone who might have worn a uniform or suit with that kind of insignia." But Sarah wasn't content to wait for the official investigation. The image had awakened something in her, a fierce determination that had been dormant for too long. She began her own investigation, starting with the school. She remembered that the security camera had malfunctioned on the day Lily disappeared. At the time, it had seemed like terrible luck. Now, she wondered if it had been deliberate. Sarah made a list of everyone who'd had access to the school's security system. It was a short list: the principal, the head of maintenance, the IT coordinator, and the janitorial staff. She began researching each person, using social media and public records to build profiles. Most had been at the school for years with spotless records, but one name stood out. Arthur Abernathy had been a janitor at Lincoln Elementary for only 6 months before Lily disappeared. He'd left his position abruptly just a month after the incident, citing health issues. Sarah couldn't find much about him online. No social media presence, no photos, just a few employment records and an old address. But something about the timing bothered her. She drove to the address listed in the records, finding a rundown apartment building on the outskirts of town. The landlord, a chatty woman named Mrs. Chen, remembered Arthur clearly. "Quiet man, kept to himself," she said, unlocking the apartment he'd rented. "Left in a hurry, didn't even collect his security deposit. Said he had to take care of his sick mother upstate." The apartment had long since been rented to someone else, but Mrs. Chen mentioned that Arthur had left some boxes in the storage unit that she'd never gotten around to disposing of. Sarah's pulse quickened as Mrs. Chen led her to the basement storage area. The boxes were covered in dust, filled mostly with old maintenance manuals and work uniforms. But at the bottom of one box, Sarah found something that made her blood run cold. A dark suit, too large for someone of average build, with a small pin on the lapel. The pin was from a security company, the same company that had installed the cameras at Lincoln Elementary. Sarah called Detective Miller immediately. Within hours, the apartment building was swarming with police. The suit was taken as evidence, and a manhunt began for Arthur Abernathy. Records showed he'd worked for the security company before taking the janitor position, giving him intimate knowledge of the school's surveillance system. Further investigation revealed that Arthur had been using a false name. His real name was Arthur Blackwood, and he had a history that made Sarah's skin crawl. Years ago, in another state, he'd been questioned in connection with an attempted child abduction, but was released due to lack of evidence. He'd moved frequently since then, taking low-level jobs at schools and youth centers, never staying anywhere long enough to raise suspicion. The police tracked his movements after leaving town. He'd used his credit card at gas stations heading north. Then the trail went cold. But Sarah remembered something from the Google Maps image, the direction they'd been walking. She pulled up the image again, tracing the path from where the photo was taken. If they'd continued in that direction, they would have reached the old industrial district, an area full of abandoned warehouses and forgotten buildings. Sarah shared this theory with Detective Miller, who organized a search of the industrial district. It was a massive undertaking. Dozens of buildings spread across several square miles, many of them condemned and dangerous to navigate. But they had to try. Meanwhile, Sarah couldn't sit still. She drove to the industrial district herself, against Detective Miller's explicit instructions to stay away. She parked outside the chain-link fence that surrounded the area and walked along the perimeter, calling Lily's name until her voice was raw. She knew it was irrational, that Lily probably wasn't here anymore if she ever had been, but she couldn't help herself. That's when she noticed something, a section of fence that had been recently repaired. The metal was less rusty, the links newer. It was subtle, something that would be easy to miss, but Sarah had developed an eye for details that didn't belong. She called Detective Miller to report the finding. The police focused their search on the buildings near the repaired fence. In an old textile warehouse, they found evidence that someone had been living there recently. Mattresses, canned food, children's books. But whoever had been there was gone. They'd missed them, possibly by only days. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A truck driver who regularly passed through the industrial district recognized Arthur's photo from the news. He'd seen him at a rest stop 200 miles north, just a week ago. The man had been traveling in an old RV with curtained windows. The trucker remembered because the man had seemed nervous, constantly looking over his shoulder, and because he'd heard what sounded like a child's voice from inside the RV. The police issued an urgent alert for the RV, described as a brown and beige 1990s model with a distinctive pattern of rust on the rear bumper. Every law enforcement agency within 500 miles was notified. Sarah wanted to join the search, but Detective Miller convinced her to stay home in case Lily tried to contact her. The waiting was agony. Sarah paced her house, unable to eat or sleep, her phone clutched in her hand. Every time it rang, her heart stopped, hoping for news. Mark came back to wait with her, their differences forgotten in the face of this new hope. Together, they sat in Lily's room, surrounded by her toys and books, praying for a miracle. The call came at dawn on the 5th day of the manhunt. A state trooper in Vermont had spotted the RV at a remote campground. They'd surrounded it at first light, finding Arthur Blackwood inside. He'd surrendered without a fight, his strange calmness unnerving the officers. But their main concern wasn't him. It was finding Lily. She wasn't in the RV. Arthur claimed he didn't know what they were talking about, that he'd never taken any child. But a search of the vehicle revealed evidence that a child had been there. Small clothes, including a pink coat with sparkly buttons, and dozens of photographs of Lily taken at the school before her disappearance. The photos showed an obsession that had clearly been building for months. Under interrogation, Arthur finally broke. He admitted to taking Lily, to disabling the security camera, to keeping her in the industrial district warehouse for several months. But he claimed he'd let her go over a year ago, dropping her off at a bus station with money and instructions to go home. No one believed him. The investigation intensified, focusing on properties Arthur had access to, places he might have hidden a child. Sarah refused to believe Lily was gone. The Google Maps image had led them this far. It couldn't be for nothing. She studied Arthur's history, looking for patterns. He'd grown up in rural Vermont, in a town so small it barely appeared on maps. His family had owned property there, an old farm that had been abandoned for decades. She shared this information with Detective Miller, who was skeptical. The property had been searched by local police, who found nothing but a collapsing barn and overgrown fields. But Sarah insisted they look again. Something about that farm, about Arthur's connection to it, felt important. Detective Miller agreed to personally lead a more thorough search of the property. Sarah wanted to come, but he gently refused. If they found something, he explained, it would be better if she wasn't there for the initial discovery. Sarah understood what he wasn't saying. If they found Lily, there was no guarantee of the condition they'd find her in. The search team arrived at the farm on a cold, gray morning. The property was as desolate as described, with tall grass hiding the remnants of old farm equipment and buildings. They searched the main house first, finding nothing but rot and decay. The barn yielded similar results. It seemed like another dead end. But one officer noticed something odd about the old storm cellar near the house. The doors were rusted shut, seemingly unopened for years, but the grass around them had been disturbed. Looking closer, he realized the rust was fake, painted on to make the doors appear abandoned. His heart racing, he called for backup before carefully pulling open the doors. The cellar had been converted into a living space. There was electricity, pulled illegally from nearby power lines. There were shelves stocked with canned goods and bottles of water, and in the corner, on a small bed, surrounded by books and toys, was a girl. She was thin and pale, her hair longer than in the photos, but it was unmistakably Lily Mitchell. The reunion between Sarah and Lily took place at the hospital, after doctors had confirmed that while malnourished and traumatized, Lily was physically unharmed. Sarah burst through the hospital doors, running down the corridor with Mark close behind. Detective Miller led them to a private room where Lily was sitting up in bed, looking small and fragile in the hospital gown. For a moment, mother and daughter just stared at each other. Then Lily whispered, "Mommy?" And Sarah flew across the room, gathering her daughter into her arms. They clung to each other, both sobbing, while Mark wrapped his arms around them both. No words were needed. No words could adequately express the relief, the joy, the overwhelming gratitude of this moment. In the days that followed, the full story emerged through gentle interviews with Lily and further interrogation of Arthur. He had been planning the abduction for months, becoming obsessed with Lily after seeing her at school. He believed she looked like his own daughter who had died years ago, and in his disturbed mind he convinced himself he was saving her from some imagined danger. He'd kept her in the warehouse initially, telling her that her parents didn't want her anymore, that he was her family now. When the search intensified, he'd moved her to the farm property, keeping her in the converted storm cellar. He'd homeschooled her, provided toys and books, and never physically harmed her, but the psychological damage of 2 years in captivity would take much longer to heal. Arthur Blackwood was charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, and numerous other crimes. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During the sentencing, Sarah gave a victim impact statement, describing the hell their family had endured and the long road of recovery ahead, but she also spoke about hope, about the power of never giving up, about the miracle of second chances. The story of Lily's recovery captivated the nation. The detail about the Google Maps discovery particularly resonated with people. The idea that in our interconnected, surveilled world, answers might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with enough determination and love to find them. Sarah received messages from other parents of missing children, asking her to review their cases, to look for clues others might have missed. Lily's adjustment to normal life was gradual and sometimes difficult. She had nightmares and struggled with anxiety. Loud noises made her panic. She couldn't bear to be alone. But with therapy, patience, and the unwavering support of her parents, she slowly began to heal. She returned to school eventually, though at a different school where she could start fresh. She made friends cautiously, learned to trust again incrementally. Sarah and Mark's marriage, which had seemed irreparably broken, slowly mended as they united in helping their daughter recover. They'd learned that grief could drive people apart, but joy and purpose could bring them back together. They moved to a new house, needing a fresh start, but they stayed in the same town, surrounded by the community that had never stopped caring about their family. Detective Miller, who had never given up on the case even when it went cold, received a commendation for his work. But he told Sarah that the real credit belonged to her, to a mother's intuition and refusal to accept defeat. He kept the printed Google Maps image on his desk, a reminder that sometimes the most important clues come from the most unexpected sources. The school implemented new security measures, including multiple camera systems with redundant backups and stricter protocols for student accountability. No child would ever disappear from Lincoln Elementary again without immediate detection. The community rallied around these changes, understanding that protecting children required constant vigilance. Arthur's property was thoroughly investigated, searching for evidence of other crimes, but Lily appeared to be his only victim. Psychologists who evaluated him described a deeply disturbed individual whose grasp on reality had been fractured by the loss of his own child years earlier. It didn't excuse his actions, but it provided some context for the incomprehensible. As time passed, the sharp edges of trauma began to soften. Lily started to smile more, laugh more. She joined the art club at school, discovering a talent for painting that helped her express feelings she couldn't put into words. Her paintings were dark at first, full of shadows and confined spaces, but gradually they became brighter, featuring open skies and fields of flowers. Sarah returned to work part-time, finding purpose in helping other families navigate crisis. She volunteered with organizations supporting families of missing children, sharing her story and offering hope to those still searching. She always emphasized the importance of never giving up, of looking for clues in unexpected places, of trusting instincts even when others doubted. The family celebrated Lily's return date each year as a second birthday, a day of gratitude and reflection. They invited Detective Miller and the other officers who'd worked on the case, creating an extended family bound by shared purpose and triumph over tragedy. These gatherings were bittersweet, acknowledging both the time lost and the miracle of reunion. Lily, as she grew older, began to speak publicly about her experience, wanting to help other survivors of abduction and trauma. She was brave and articulate, transforming her pain into purpose. She advocated for better resources for recovering victims, for improved alert systems for missing children, for taking every disappearance seriously no matter the circumstances. The Google Maps image that had broken the case became part of law enforcement training, an example of how digital tools could aid in investigations. Sarah often spoke at conferences, teaching investigators and families to explore every avenue, to use every resource available. Technology, she argued, had made it easier for predators to plan crimes, but it also created digital footprints that could lead to justice. Years later, when Lily graduated from high school, Sarah stood in the audience with tears streaming down her face. She thought about all the moments they'd almost lost. The first day of high school, learning to drive, prom night, this graduation. Every milestone was a gift, a reminder of how close they'd come to a different ending. Lily went on to study criminal justice in college, determined to help other missing children come home. She specialized in digital forensics, understanding how technology could be used to find the lost and bring perpetrators to justice. Her professors were impressed by her insight and dedication, not knowing the personal history that drove her passion. The pink coat with sparkly buttons was eventually donated to a museum exhibit about missing children who'd been recovered. Lily wanted it to represent hope for other families still searching. Next to it hung the printed Google Maps image, grainy and pixelated, but powerful in what it represented. The moment hope was rekindled, the clue that brought a daughter home. Sarah sometimes still opened Google Maps, not searching for anything specific, just remembering that afternoon when despair turned to hope. She'd trace the virtual streets of their old neighborhood, stopping at the spot where she'd seen that familiar pink coat. It was a pilgrimage of gratitude, a reminder that miracles could hide in the most mundane places. The case changed how missing children investigations were conducted in their state. Law enforcement agencies implemented protocols for checking historical digital imagery, understanding that Street View services and security cameras created an archive that might contain crucial evidence. What had seemed like a desperate long shot became standard procedure. Arthur Blackwood died in prison 5 years into his sentence, never expressing remorse for what he'd done. Lily felt nothing when she heard the news, neither relief nor sadness. He'd been a chapter in her life, a dark one, but not the defining one. She was defined by her survival, by her family's love, by her choice to transform trauma into purpose. As this incredible story shows, a mother's love and determination can move mountains, or in this case, find a needle in the digital haystack of Google Maps. Sarah's refusal to give up, even when everyone else had moved on, led to the breakthrough that brought Lily home. It reminds us that answers can come from the most unexpected places, that technology meant for one purpose can serve another, that hope should never be abandoned even when it seems irrational. The case of Lily Mitchell stands as a testament to the power of persistence, the importance of following instincts, and the incredible tool that modern technology can be in solving crimes. A single Google Maps image, captured by chance 2 days after a child's disappearance, became the key to solving a case that had gone completely cold. It proves that sometimes the evidence we need is hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with enough love and determination to find it. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of hope, perseverance, and justice. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever discovered something unexpected through digital maps or online tools? Your story might inspire others who are searching for their own answers. Remember, miracles can happen when we refuse to give up hope, when we keep searching even when the odds seem impossible, and when we trust that love will find a way to bring our children home.